Hello everyone, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus has been out for a little bit over a week or two now. I think it's been like a week. So let's go and compare it against one of the best Plus lineups that Samsung has ever made, which was the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and see how both these phones basically hold up and kind of compare. Now if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the outside, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus came out back in 2020, so it's basically like a 3-year-old phone right now. And with the Galaxy S20 Plus, I will definitely tell you this was a very, very good phone Samsung made back then. It had a very big 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It was a 120Hz panel, 1440p. It was just probably one of the best panels Samsung made at that moment. Probably the Ultra was the best one, but this was a very, very good panel Samsung made. It had that hole punch display, curved glass, very little bezel around the whole entire display. And without a doubt, still when we look at these types of phones and these types of panels, I just think Samsung knocks it out of the park. And even now, when I still pick up phones from this era, the S20, the S20 Ultra, I mean, it's crazy how good of a job Samsung made these panels back in 2020. Even the Galaxy S8 Plus still has a really good display, if I'm being honest. Now the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus that just came out, this one has a little bit tiny bit of a smaller 6.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display. So it's a 1080p panel, so it did go down in resolution and it's a tiny bit smaller, but it's a 120Hz panel still. It's a flat display, so some of you may actually prefer that. It's a hole punch display still, and it's still a very good looking panel as well. With these types of screens, I think Samsung just has calibrated these displays so well that you're really not going to be able to tell like which one is the worst one or whatever. They're both very good panels and they both still hold up very, very well. Now they both have USB Type-C ports on the bottom, but the Galaxy S20 Plus still has that microSD card slot, which is incredible. Having that type of I/O in this type of phone like this is really cool. You can just pump out that microSD card, put some more storage in there and move on. That is really, really powerful, and I kind of wish more phones would have it. So that by far is probably one of my favorite things about the Galaxy S20 Plus for sure, and it's still one feature that a lot of people would love to have on their devices. Now on the back, on the top left, we do have our camera setups, and these two phones look very different on the back. I will be honest, the S20 series in general, I was not a fan of the way those phones looked on the back. I think they looked very ugly, to be honest. With the S21, it started improving a little bit, but then they brought the plastic back. The S22s were perfect, but I will be honest, the S23s in general, I'm not a big fan of how those type of phones look. I like how, I like having a little camera module that sticks out a little bit. I feel like this thing will kind of grow on me, but it's not really that big of a deal for you, I guess. I'm just complaining a little bit. Now the S23 Plus does have a frosted glass back, which is really nice to have. I think frosted glass backs are perfect, so I'm really happy that these types of phones have it. You have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging on both, but I will tell you, if I'm looking at the back of both of these phones, the S23 Plus definitely looks way better, but the front of the S20 Plus may actually look a little bit better for some people. So in terms of the outside, that kind of covers it up there. Now in the camera department, like I mentioned, there's kind of a different type of camera setup for the most part. So it's a triple camera setup kind of, and you do get an additional lens on the S20 Plus. So you have a 12 megapixel wide angle lens on the S20 Plus, 64 megapixel telephoto lens, 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and then a 0.3 megapixel depth camera. Whereas on the S23 Plus, you were getting a 50 megapixel wide angle lens, 10 megapixel telephoto lens, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. Now you can do 8K video on the back, and you can do 4K at 60 on the front, which is amazing. And I'll definitely tell you, both these cameras are very good. Clearly the S23 Plus is going to be the better one. It's going to be more optimized. It's still going to be getting software updates, so this type of phone is going to be getting all those cool camera features that have came out the last few years, where the S20 Plus kind of just didn't get it. And I think that's kind of one of the big things to keep in mind here. I think the Galaxy S20 Plus camera is still very, very good, and really no matter what you're going to do with it, I mean, it's going to be a very solid camera. Whether you're on One UI 3 or you're on One UI 5 like the current version is, you're still going to be getting tons of camera features. And that's the one thing I always recommend people to kind of look at, is that when you're getting a phone, make sure it has those 3 cameras, the wide, ultra wide, and telephoto lens, or at least a wide and ultra wide camera, and the S20 Plus still gets it. The S23 Plus though is a very, very good phone. That device has so much going for it, it's not even funny. There is just an endless amount of possibilities that phone basically has over something like the Galaxy S20 Plus, and that is something that I've always seen. But if the S23 Plus was like a 10 out of 10, the S20 Plus would be like an 8 out of 10, maybe like a 7.5 out of 10 still, to be honest. So in terms of the camera setup, that kind of covers it up there. In terms of software and longevity, both these phones, like I mentioned, are on One UI, they're on Android, which is great. But the problem here is that the S20 Plus has already been out for about 3 years now. I will probably say if it's lucky, it may get One UI 6, but I don't really know for a fact. The Galaxy S10 ended on One UI 4, the Galaxy S20 can end on One UI 5, then the Galaxy S21 could end on One UI 6. I think that's probably going to be the lay of the land for a little bit of time. So again, I'm not too sure what's going to 100% happen here, but if I had to kind of estimate, I'll probably say that the Galaxy S20 Plus might end up ending this year, and even if it were to get One UI 6, the S23 Plus is going to outlast the S20 Plus like crazy. So if you're wanting to get the S20 Plus, by all means go for it. But like I said, the biggest problem with that type of phone right now is that we don't really know how much longer it's going to last, and it is definitely almost done getting software updates. So that has been kind of the bigger thing to keep in mind here. And in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of the performance of that type of device, you can see that internally on the S20 Plus, we do have that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset with 8GB of RAM, and there's only one model of that phone. With the S23 Plus, you are getting that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset inside with 8GB of RAM inside of that model. So this has been something else that I've kind of been having to recommend and tell people. You are getting twice the amount of base storage on the S23 Plus over the S20 Plus, but like I mentioned, you're getting an SD card on the S20 Plus, so it's not that big of a deal. Now the performance of the S20 Plus was very good when it came out, and still it's like pretty decent. It's definitely not the slowest performing phone by any means, and anytime I use that type of device, I'm pretty happy with it. Any of the S20s or any phone from 2020 for the most part that had the 865 chipset is fairly fast, and I haven't really found too many things to complain about. The only thing is that, which is kind of a benefit, when I look at people who are in some other communities that are specifically in the emulator community and they're using Android phones, that 865 chipset is still a very common chipset, and people are still getting very good performance from that type of device, which is very interesting. Now the S23 Plus is clearly going to be the faster one here. You're getting that newer chipset, like a way newer chipset, and it's focused more on power than I think on battery life, so that's probably not the best kind of trade-off, but I definitely do think with the S23 Plus, whether you're doing light applications or you're doing very, very intensive apps, you are definitely going to be getting a faster phone on the S23 Plus, but it really just depends on what you expect from it. Like if you're trying to go and expect the craziest performance, you're definitely going to be getting that on the S23 Plus, but if you're expecting that from the S20 Plus, you may not end up getting it. So from that perspective, the S23 Plus is clearly the faster one. The S20 Plus is still pretty fast, but it's definitely faster on the S23 Plus. The battery life should be better on the S23 Plus. You're getting a 200 mAh battery increase on the S23 Plus over the S20 Plus, so that might be another thing to keep in mind as well. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll definitely tell you is I really don't think you can go wrong with either one of these devices. I think the S20 Plus is still a very, very good phone, but I would definitely tell you the S23 Plus is the better way to go for a majority of people out there. There's really no point in buying there's not a point in buying an S10 or S10 Plus right now, to be honest, but if you have to go buy an S20 Plus, go for it. But the S23 Plus or the S22 Plus are very, very solid phones, and I love those phones a lot. So in terms of that's kind of how both these phones compare. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.